Before we head back to the rack, let's look at these or talk about these interface defaults for a moment because there are a couple that we really want to pay attention to now that we're going to be on a router. First off, the interfaces are not going to have IP addresses by default. It makes perfect sense because when they build the router, they have no idea what IP addresses we're going to need. Secondly, the interfaces are shut down. And it's going to sound like I'm picking nits here in this section when I talk about the differences between shutdown and down, but they're very different things, and you're going to see these fairly often in your troubleshooting. So we need to be very clear on the differences there. And let's take a look at serial 0 right now on router 3 with a command called show interface serial 0. And do not panic at the sheer amount of information that is in this output. There's a lot of info here. We don't need to know it all now, but a couple things to look at from top to bottom here. And first off is that very first line, and you'll notice that it says serial 0 is administratively down. That means that the interface is actually shut down. If you just see down here, that means something else entirely, and we'll talk about that in the next few minutes. Then we got something here called a line protocol, and whatever that is, that's down too. So we'll take a look at that and talk about that in detail shortly. And let's see, as far as our defaults go right now, there's one more that I mentioned to you in the introduction to WAN, and that's that the default encapsulation is HDLC, but you're almost always going to change that. But it's a very important default to remember. But right now, we're more concerned with this right here. So we've got administratively down on the board. And again, this is a very important command when it comes to troubleshooting. Outside of ping, it's going to be one of the first commands you run, just depends on what's going on the router you're troubleshooting. Now, let's go ahead and actually open that up and see what happens. And you're going to get one quick lesson here very quickly when it comes to opening a serial interface. Now I know I've got the font raised, so a little of this will be off screen, but we'll make sure to show it to you. Let me raise that up just a bit. And everything looks good so far. So we've got a little timestamp going on here. You see that 1 second after serial 0 was opened, it changed the state to up, and that line protocol, whatever that is, came up too. I strongly recommend to you that when you're working with serial interfaces and line protocols, that you hang around for a little while after you open an interface or you think you fixed something, because you might not have. And here's the problem. Let's see what the timestamp was. And about 27 seconds later, the line protocol went down, changed state to down. And we could stay there, but I can guarantee you that line protocol is not going to come up, and I'm just about to tell you what that is, I promise. That's actually one of the first reasons I got into teaching, is when I was studying for the CCNA 10 plus years ago, no one told you what the line protocol was. I was studying, it was like, so what is this thing? And then when I found out, it's like, that's it? So now we have a different combination up here under show interface. Now that we've opened it, we've got serial 0 is up, line protocol is down. We also don't have an IP address here, so I'm just going to give it one. Doesn't matter whether you have the interface open or shut when you do that, but if you shut it for any reason, you always want to make sure that you open it back up. So as we saw on the live equipment, from top to bottom, we saw the interface state change to up almost immediately. Then the line protocol changed to up, and that sounds pretty good too. And then here in the book I mentioned the line protocol went down about 21 seconds later and went down 27 seconds later on the live equipment. It's going to be between 20 and 30 when you're running HDLC. And that does not sound good. So let's examine what this is I've got the top line here, show interface serial 0. Serial 0 is up, line protocol is down. Here's the deal with this. Serial 0 is up is referring to the physical state of the interface. The line protocol is dealing with the logical state of the interface. So we've got physical versus logical. And we can have interfaces that physically are perfectly fine, but logically they're not. And I went over some of this in the WAN section, but it's definitely worth repeating here because it's great troubleshooting material. A serial interface is one half of a DTE-DCE connection, and that's the DTE end. And what happens is the DCE end of that connection has to supply a clock rate to the DTE. If that clock rate is not present, the line protocol will go down. It's not going to happen immediately when you open the interface. It's going to have to miss it's going to have to miss the clock rate for a while. There are other reasons the line protocol can go down, and we're going to cover those throughout the course and in your CCNA studies. But once you get that clock rate up and running, the line protocol will come up. You don't have to shut and reopen the serial interface, anything like that at all. In this particular case, the clock rate is perfectly fine. What's not fine is we have an encapsulation mismatch, because this is in a frame relay cloud. That's what I've got it set up for, frame relay encapsulation. And here I've got encapsulation HDLC, which is the default. So I would need to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And again, we'll do this again when you're doing frame relay in your CCNA studies. We'll definitely cover frame relay in depth. I've got a couple hours of labs there for you. But right now, let's go ahead and bring that up. And that is short for encapsulation, frame relay. And now that I've got the encapsulation set correctly, the line protocol is going to come up almost immediately. And this time it should stay up. But again, just a friendly word of warning, whether it's a lab environment, whether it's a production network, when you're troubleshooting the line protocol and you get it to come up, stick around for 60 seconds. All you got to do is watch it for a minute and just leave it alone and make sure it stays up. If it's still up at that point, it should indeed stay up unless something else changes. So now, let's run show interface serial 0, and this is what we're going after, my friends. Serial 0 is up, line protocol is up. That's what we want. And you've got some new values here appearing, this LMI and the DELC and the LMI type, that kind of thing. We're going to cover that when you study frame relay, especially for the CCNA exam. Now, what if there is a physical problem with the interface? What are we going to see? And another word to the wise here for lab work and production networks, a cable can look like it's connected and it's just loose enough for it to go down, or for it to show down on the interface. It never hurts. Always check your cabling first anyway with something like that. But always reach up and just make sure that your cable is connected, especially in a crowded router cabinet. It's easy to dislodge a cable. It happens. Well, first you would see a message like this. I have this on the board for you. Interface 00, change state to down. The line protocol is, of course, going to follow suit. It's going to go down as well, because your physical state can be up, but the logical state can be down. That's fine. That can happen. It is impossible for an interface to be physically down and logically up. Can't happen. We don't get to say that very often, so let's enjoy it. Can't happen. This is what you'll see with show interface 0. Serial 0 is down, line protocol is down. You see what I was saying now about picking that nit between administratively down and down, but there is a big difference. Administratively down just means the interface is shut down. When it says just down, that means there is a physical issue there. Cable could be loose, something like that. As speaking of that kind of thing, again, don't start troubleshooting anything complicated on the router. Sometimes we go for the most complex solution when the most obvious solution is actually the one we need to go with, and that goes along with checking your cables. And show controller serial is a fantastic command for seeing if a cable is truly being seen by the interface. And let me bring the router up here. This can be a little bit of a squirrely command in one fashion. You'll notice that when I typed in show interface serial 0, there was no problem with me not putting a space between serial and 0. Well, this command's the only one I've run into over the years that seems not to like that. Let's see if this particular model does that, because after show controller you're going to need to type in the interface. And yep, and just remember, when you see that caret, this is a fantastic little feature on Cisco routers. When you see that caret, that means this is where you went wrong. It's not like certain vendors where they just say, hey, that's error 73984A12, then when you look it up in help, it's not even there. This is telling you you did fine until you got up to here. And the fine problem here is you do need to put a space between serial and 0 there. And again, do not panic, people of Earth. I know this is a lot of stuff here. You could go years without ever looking at this, hopefully, and if you do, you're probably sending it to Cisco Tech Support. This is real gearhead stuff there. What we're really interested in is this right here. This is going to tell you whether you've got a DTE end of a cable connected to that interface, a DCE end of a cable connected to that interface, or no cable connected to that interface. And when you have no cable, this is not very difficult to interpret. It's literally going to say no cable. And what happened here is that I just plugged it right back in, and we get a message that both the interface and the line protocol are back up. Everything's beautiful. Then, of course, I verified with show interface serial and show controller 0. Show interface serial 0 tells me up and up. That's what I'm looking for. Show controller serial 0 shows me that I now have a cable in place. Now, these up and down combinations can be a little confusing at first, but not very. I'm sure you've already got a grip on it, but this is such important troubleshooting material. I really want to go over it with you again. I think this is just going to be all over your exam, and I know you're going to see it in labs and production networks. So let's go over these combinations again. Now, interface is administratively down, line protocol is down. We know what the deal is there. The interface is shut down. Remember, router interfaces are shut down by default. Switch interfaces are open. Interface is down, line protocol is down. We just saw what that was. That's likely a cable issue. Sometimes interfaces go bad. You know, anything physical in this business, as we know, can eventually go bad. But always check that cable first, and we know how to do that with show controller. Now, the interface is up, line protocol is down combination. This can be a little tricky depending on what you're running, because this means physically everything is fine. You know, the cable's in place, the interface is up, no problem at all, but there's a logical issue. Make sure you're getting a clock rate from your DCE, and make sure that your encapsulations match, and much more about that in the WAN section. And we did see there, just gave you a real quick lesson, if you're running HDLC on one end of the cable and frame relay on the other end, that's what you're going to get. Physically, everything is fine, but logically, there is a problem. The two things that can't happen, the two combinations that you cannot see, interface is down, line protocol is up, can happen, because if the physical part of the interface is down, the logical part has to be down. And again, for the same reason, interface is administratively down, line protocol is up, can't happen. And we now know exactly what we want. Interface is up, line protocol is up. So some great troubleshooting material there. We're going to start the next video talking about the startup configuration and the running configuration. Sometimes the contents are the same, sometimes they're not, and there's something else we're going to get to do there that we usually don't do on production routers unless we really we're tired of working there. So take a breather, make sure you've got everything down from this particular video, and I'll see you on the next one.